If there weren't any bad cars, how could we ever appreciate the good ones? Today, we take a look at the top 10 worst of the worst. Some of them were easily breakable, many were iffy, a lot were underpowered, and a few would denigrate into a pile of rust right before your eyes. Terrible, but in our list, we'll go over the worst cars defined as a car that shaped American automotive culture around its bad example. That doesn't mean that all the cars here were big sellers, only that their undeniable lack of character made everyone notice. The diabolical nature of these machines, however, is that there's a good idea at the heart of all of them. But it's a good idea with a letdown by half-hearted engineering, haphazard quality, or cynical compromises. Coming in at number 10 was the 1979 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme Diesel. As bad as a 5.7-liter Olds diesel V8 was, the 4.3-liter version was worse. Sold only in the 1979 Cutlass, the 4.3 diesel made 90 horsepower before shattering into shrapnel. The first Oldsmobile diesels arrived in 1978, and they carried a modified version of the brand's 5.7-liter 350 cubic inch V8. By 1979, the year of this magazine ad, the division had increased its oil burning options to include the 4.3-liter 261 cubic inch V8 as well, offering diesel engines in a whopping 19 Oldsmobile models, with the promise of up to 32 miles per gallon from diesel Cutlass models and up to 28 miles per gallon from the diesel-powered Cutlass Cruiser station wagon. At number 9 is the 1971 Ford Pinto. Ford Motor Company decided to meet the threat from abroad head-on. In 1968, Ford executives decided to produce the Pinto, known inside the company as Lee's car, after Ford President Lee Iacocca. The Pinto was to weigh no more than 2,000 pounds and cost no more than $2,000. Eager to have its subcompact ready for the 1971 model year, Ford decided to compress the normal drafting board to showroom time of about 3.5 years into 2. The compressed schedule meant that any design changes typically made before production line tooling would have to be made during it. Built to a $2,000 base price, the subcompact Pinto infamously lacked protection for its rear-mounted fuel tank. Ford knew that the Pinto represented a serious fire hazard when struck from the rear, even in low-speed collisions. Ford wound up paying out millions in judgments. At number 8 is the 1982 Cadillac Cimarron, a cynical attempt to compete against BMW with the redecorated version of the front-drive 4-cylinder Chevrolet Cavalier. Wait a minute, isn't that a rebadged Chevy Cavalier with a new grille and a leather interior? The Chevy wasn't the issue, and there are plenty of fans of the Cavalier, but passing one off as a Caddy surely didn't fool buyers. Cimarron was the darkest days in the legacy of America's luxury marquee. The Cimarron's competition included Audi 5000, BMW 320i, Volvo GLE, and the Saab 900S, which were all superior choices. Fortunately, the Cimarron was discontinued in 1988, and today we thankfully have more luxurious and badge-worthy vehicles to take its place, including the Cadillac Escalade SUV, the CT5V sports sedan, and many more. Coming in at number 7 is the 1958 Edsel Corsair. Ford went hunting for a market niche that wasn't there with a redecorated Mercury that had been beaten with an ugly stick. The legendary flop of all automotive flops. Yes, they named it after the first child of Ford's founder Henry and his wife Clara. However, it's just not a name that rolls off the tongue easily. When people tell their friends and neighbors what kind of car they bought, they either want name recognition or at least one that sounds cool. Dealers were required to store the Edsel undercover and would be fined or lose their franchise if they showed the cars before the release date. All the hype brought a curious public in record numbers to see its unveiling on E-Day, September 4th, 1957. And then they left without buying. The Edsel's quality control issues became compounded by the Ford dealership mechanics. No additional training would lead to their unfamiliarity with the car's state-of-the-art technology. The automobile's biggest problem was its automatic teletouch transmission. The driver selected the gears by pushing buttons on the center of the steering wheel. At number 6 is the 2003 Saturn Ion. Shockingly incompetent to drive and with an interior to match. Kick it and your foot might get stuck in the gaps between the plastic body panels. Saturn's all-new Ion boasts one of the biggest and most powerful engines in its class. Its $900 automatic transmission boasts 5 gears, one more than its peers generally offer. Its trunk is roomier than those in other econo-boxes. There are loads of standard and optional equipment not traditionally found in the econo-box class, such as speed-sensitive wipers, automatic headlamps, retained accessory power, and OnStar. The assault begins with the discordant and the unharmonious styling that comes together as an orgy of chamfers, cut lines, royal door gaps, and kit car panel fits that utterly offend the consumer's eye. The gap between the hood and the grille header panel could pass for a Ram air scoop. The leading edge of each front fender comes to a pant-snagging point sharp enough to pick your teeth with. And the non-starting ignition switch issues ended this car's run in 2007. At number 5 is a 1971 Chevrolet Vega, an engine that couldn't hold oil. In a car built with contempt for its buyers, it's the car that invited Americans to buy Toyotas and Hondas. However, it did make a good pro-stock racer. The Chevrolet Vega is remembered as one of General Motors' worst cars, a troublesome rust bucket, prone to gas tank fires and melting engines. The Vega was designed and built with new processes and procedures that should have made it the most advanced small car on the market. The Vega's engine didn't actually melt, but if you got it too hot, the cylinders would distort, wearing the coating on the walls and forcing coolant past the head gaskets. At number 4 is the 1987 Hugo. This even cheaper version of the Fiat 127 seemed like it couldn't possibly be as awful as its low price suggested, but it was. Although it was a communist-made car, dealers had customers lining up 10 deep to buy one. Hugo American sold an astonishing 1,050 cars in a single day. But what goes up must come down. There were serious quality issues, crawling to 60 miles per hour in 14 seconds, and topping out at 86 miles per hour. Then came the reviews. Saturday Night Live, Leno, Letterman, The Simpsons. Kids told jokes about it. The end came in 1992 when, during the Yugoslav Civil War, Hugo America went bankrupt, and the United Nations issued a trade embargo on Serbia that included Hugo parts. Coming in at number 3 is the 1975 AMC Pacer. Unfortunately, a desperate AMC bet on a weird and wide small car with a fishbowl greenhouse and archaic 6-cylinder drivetrain. When you talk about this car, you have to start all your sentences with "unfortunately." When first released, the Pacer was a smash success, and after a few model years, became a massive sales disaster for AMC. Ultimately, the Pacer was too heavy for a smaller car, and it didn't have a fuel efficiency 4-cylinder engine option to be more competitive in the small car that competed in the small car segment. The production for this fishbowl ended in 1980. However, today you can find AMC Pacer car clubs across the U.S. At number 2 is the 1974 Ford Mustang II. Built upon the spindly bones of the Pinto, this shrunken, malformed pony is instantly appalling to Mustang lovers. Unfortunately, it was hugely popular with buyers stuck with serial fuel crises. The Mustang II came along in 1974, and it must have been a shock to the purists. Based on the Pinto, the new Mustang was downright tiny, with a choice of 4 or 6-cylinder power and one anemic V8. It's easy to look back and think people would have hated the new Mustang, but they didn't, because right about that time, the Mustang II hit the showrooms. The OPEC oil embargo was hitting our gas stations. The Mustang II was an instant hit, 386,000 sales in 1974. The Mustang's best year since 1967. Not bad considering it was sharing showroom space with Ford's even smaller Pinto. No question, the Mustang II was the perfect car for the time. That said, from here the argument pretty much falls apart. The OPEC oil embargo was over by the summer of 1974, and by 1975, Americans were back to buying full-size cars. Mustang II sales skidded to well under 190,000 for 1975, and continued to drop. Our number 1 top pick for the all-time worst car is the 2001 Pontiac Aztek. Drive one and you quickly realize that the Aztek's exterior design is its best feature. It's the very worst car of all time because it's the only car on the list to kill an 84-year-old car company. The Aztek drove the biggest and the last nail into Pontiac's plastic-clad coffin. The Aztek represented all that was wrong with GM's design process. The concept car actually did something few GM designs do: arrive before a trend. This time, the crossover SUV that combines the attributes of a truck and a passenger car. And GM had high hopes to sell 50,000 to 70,000 Azteks a year, establishing Pontiac on the cutting edge. Then came production. The penny pinchers demanded that cost be kept low by putting the concept car on an existing minivan platform. That destroyed the original proportions and produced the vehicle's bizarre push-up back end. But the designers kept telling themselves it was good enough. By the time it was done, it came out as this horrible, weird-looking mix of car meets truck or SUV. Sales never reached the 30,000 level needed to make money. So poorly was the Aztek styling received that General Motors announced it would restyle the thing only after 5 months on the market. That didn't help either. Pontiac finally took the Aztek behind the barn in 2005. Well, there you have it. Our top 10 worst of the worst U.S. cars ever made. What car do you think was the worst car ever made? We want to know. Leave your comments below. As usual, we want to thank you for watching. If you like this video, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe. Don't forget to hit that bell to be notified of our weekly videos. Thanks for watching.